All right. Thank you for being here tonight. Monday, April, what is today? The 12th, 2021. This is the second class in our series, Inhale Peace, Exhale Kindness. And as we were just saying for a moment, is that these lessons get, named breathing lessons. And so any lesson, every lesson is about the mechanism of how the system finds foundation for neutrality and finds a way to use the whole self to breathe more easily. So with that, we will start. Come to standing and just bring yourself off of your mat or your table or the floor, whatever it is that you're lying on, and come all the way up to standing so that your feet are just on the ground. And the important thing is that you use a check-in scenario the same at the beginning or the end. So if it's uncomfortable to be on the ground, then you can be on your mat, but then compare the same apples to apples before and after the lesson. So close your eyes and just let yourself be here for a second. You're making contact with the ground. There's some way that your system is able to take in all kinds of sensory experience. Sounds, ambient sounds that are going on in your house, the sound of my voice, if there's sunlight or light flickering or shining. And then there's the kinesthetic sensations of how you make contact with the ground. If there's discomfort, the sense of weight. And as soon as I say these words, there's some part of your sensing self, what I call your alligator brain, that just begins to attend. There's nothing to fix, correct, or change. There could be a sense of lightness or a sense of buoyancy. But what we begin to notice is the difference often between two sides, or if you've done enough ATM, the difference from one time to the next. Or if you have only done a little bit of ATM, the time that you noticed yourself standing in the grocery store line or when you were standing cooking, any one of those noticings, your nervous system amasses this ability to discern over time. And this lesson series is about breathing. And of course, breathing is something that's always with us. And we don't need our cognitive mind to breathe. Of course, our cognitive mind can influence our breath, but inhaling and exhaling occurs without any cortical, any top-down control. And so as soon as I say the word breathe, usually there's a tendency to want to adjust it somehow. So we breathe three-dimensionally, just like we move three-dimensionally. So there's this way that Feldenkrais talked about, this equal ease to be able to generate movement in all three cardinal planes, or all six directions. So those are forward and back, up, which is towards the ceiling, and down, which is towards the center of the earth, and right and left. And most of the time, most of us are aware of breathing somehow forwards, right? And so as you're standing there, the body is adjusting. It's making these little micro adjustments. It's doing that in your weight shift. Possibly you notice some sort of what I call an ing, like a verb-ing of yourself, a fluxing. And your breathing is going on. And you just observe, do you have a tendency to sort of lean or sway or shift more in any one of those six directions? And the answer might be, I don't know, and that's fine, but just observe. And do you notice if you have any tendency to breathe through your chest, your belly, your ribs, your back, your sides, into one of those 6 cardinal directions easier. So you just know what you know about that. And in particular, recognize up around the collarbones and the shoulders, and where the shoulders are in relationship to the pelvis. So the trunk lives in between there. So this lesson explores particularly an understanding about your trunk, and very gently, just as a test reference movement here, just shift your weight a little bit to one side. It doesn't matter which, but just go. So you're not going to really try to pick up the other leg. You just go over there and you just feel like, how do you do that? Do you turn, or do you just sort of fold towards one side and then you come back? You do it a couple of times to the same side. You just observe. How free is the system to go there and not collapse? And then come back to the center. And now test the weight shift to the other side. That's it. And you just observe. Did you choose the easier side first? Do you tend to fall or collapse when you go to one side more so than on the other side? You know, whatever you know about that. And then take one final little reference and take a small little walk and observe as you walk how your arms swing. Yeah, beautiful. It's just a medium slow walk. It's not like zombie slow, but slower than you would typically walk. That's so that you can have what I call these SSR, slow, small, subtle sensing. You'll notice a lot more. That's it. Come to your mat and lie on your back. Let your arms and legs go long. And come to recognize how you allow yourself to be supported by the ground. So notice how I asked that. Not what do you try to force to get flat or straight, but what just happens spontaneously that you allow Mother Earth to come up under you and support. Where are there spaces? Where's there contact? And how is it different from one side to the other? And notice now, is there a tendency there? That looks good. Is there a tendency as you lie to feel that it would be easier for you to move in any one of the 6 cardinal planes, or the 6 directions? So up is still over your head, down is still below your feet. Forward is the ceiling and backward is the floor. Notice the space between your right elbow and your side and the space between your left elbow and your side. And notice the length of your 2 legs. So in general, does it feel that one side might be longer or shorter than the other? And how does that correlate to what you noticed in standing when you shifted your weight onto your right leg and when you shifted your weight onto your left leg? And nothing has to make a logical sense. It just is. Now interlace your fingers together and just interlace them like in front of you over your chest. So most of you know this, but we have what we call a habitual and an unhabitual interlacing, right? So if you interlace your fingers, one thumb will be on top of the other, and then that'll determine the fingers all the way down, right? So one pinky is below the other. Now switch your thumb, put the other thumb on top and move all the fingers down. And then that leaves the other pinky at the bottom and the second thumb on top. So we call that the second interlacing. And one of those is more familiar than the other. Most of the time people will interlace habitually first. So go back to the first interlacing and just feel the difference. So it's not just that your fingers feel different, right? It evokes an entirely different feeling in your chest and your spine, usually your breath. You could go back and forth a couple times, but stay there for a moment so you can sense. Because it doesn't just change your fingers, it actually pulls one side slightly, itty bitty, like a millimeter more forwards than the other. And that begins a rotation in the spine. So now cross habitually. If you don't know, choose one. And now take your habitually interlaced fingers and put them behind your head. Right? So your head rests on your hands. Now, keeping your legs long, slide the interlaced hands out from your head and just bring them over the top of your head. So they rest someplace on the floor, right? And if they can't rest on the floor, yeah. So some of you can use a pillow underneath your shoulder or your arm, whatever you need. You need to take care of yourself. So now your interlaced fingers are not behind your head, they're above your head. And you just notice, like, where do they rest? Do they rest on the back of your hands? Do they rest towards the pinky side? Do they rest with the palms sort of down towards the floor? What do you do? And then gently, keeping your legs long, begin. So this is called, often this is called a halo lesson, right? It's like you were an angel and you had a halo over your head or a hoop. And so take the hoop of your arms, and without lifting a ton, right? So now it doesn't mean you don't, there has to be some removal of weight a little bit from the ground, but a little bit. Could you take the halo of your arms and slide the halo of your arms a millimeter or two to the right? And like your nervous system is like, what the heck? How do I have to do that? What do I have to do that? And then you come back. So it's not that you're lifting them and setting your arms over there. And then just notice, like, what do you do? What does your head do? Does your head roll? Does it turn? What does your trunk do? So there's a lot of different strategies for how to do this. And as I put some more constraints on it, it's not that what you were doing was wrong. It's just going to change what you have to strategize to meet the constraints. So now keep your arms, your hoop above your head. And you could try a different place for the hands to rest, right? You could change the angle of the hands. So you could turn them and let them rest at a slightly different place and slide them again with them rested. So if they were on the pinky side, they might rest more towards the back of the hand. If they were on the back of the hand, they might rest more towards the palm side. You just try a slightly different angle of the palm of the hands facing either your head or the floor. That's it. Does that make sense now? And they're resting in a different place, and slide again the hands, the halo to the right. And you just observe, if you change that angle, right, it rotates your shoulders and your clavicles. And observe, as you go over there, what does your head do? And what do you do with your breath? Like, if you're very, very honest, do you hold your breath at some point? Do you stop your breath? And then come back and uninterlace your fingers and bring your arms down. That's it. You just let them rest down at your side, however they come down. So you can bring them down through the front like some of you did, or you slide them around the sides, however that happens. And observe. It's really a fairly complex thing to rotate the conglomeration of several different joints that occur in the shoulder complex to be able to rotate and bring our arms over our head. So there's an impact on the collarbone and the shoulder blade and some upper ribs and the sternum. And of course, the humerus, the arm bone. And think about those upper ribs and the collarbone. They're very close to the upper aspects of the lung. And there's not a whole lot of space in there, right? There's more space in the middle of the rib cage and the trunk. So now interlace habitually. So keep interlacing habitually, whichever way that is, and bring your halo above your head again. So your elbows rest someplace out and your halo is above your head. You use whatever you need under your elbow if you need something. And now bend your knees and put your feet flat. So now both knees are bent, your feet are flat on the floor, and you find the best place for your feet to be. The place where you can have the most skeletal support. If that means you have to take your socks off, then you can take your socks off. And now, using your legs and pelvis, however it is that they might enable you to find more smoothness, slide the halo over to the right and notice what you do with your head. Can you slide the halo over to the right so that the plane of your face stays looking at the ceiling? Okay, so that means you're not going to roll your head. Could you let the back of your head slide along the floor somehow along with the halo to the right? Yeah. And then slide your head, the back of your head, and your halo back to the center. Right? Now, you can use your pelvis and your legs in whatever way enables that to happen more smoothly. Okay, so if there's an oomping, right, like if there's a forcing or a pushing, that's probably not smooth. So reduce the effort and find out. It's not a particularly initially simple or easy movement. So how can you reduce effort? How can you coordinate something between this unit of your hoop and your head and trunk, upper trunk, with your pelvis and legs? And then your trunk in the middle, the main part of your trunk, has to be influenced. So now the next time your hoop and your head are to the right, leave them there. So the plane of the face is pointing towards the ceiling. Your ear has not come closer to the floor. So your side bent to the right. And now staying there, can you a little bit just begin to roll your head side to side? Now, without changing the hoop stays to the right, and the head still stays relatively to the right of center, but you roll it. Now what happens? Can you go smoothly and not stop your breath? It's like patting your head and rubbing your stomach. A lot of ATM feels like that, right? Okay, now come back, bring your face towards the ceiling again, parallel with the ceiling. Your hoop and your head stay to the right. And now slide everything to the right a little bit more. What do you do with your legs? How do you help? Yep, everything slides to the right, your hoop and your head. That's it. And now keeping your hoop there, roll your head again. And notice when your head rolls to the left and when your head rolls to the right, what's the impact there on the upper ribs and on your breath? Good. Bring everything back slowly. Slide everything back, your hoop of your arms and your head. Slide the back of your head back to the center. Slowly let your legs down, let your arms down, and take a rest. That's it. And observe. So awareness through movement and FI, for that matter, the hands-on part of Feldenkrais, both of them are the same. The purpose is to purposefully create the conditions that let the nervous system be able to feel differences. So it's not about trying to make you even. It's about letting the system recognize differences, because when it recognizes differences, it begins to self-organize towards counterbalance. which is not necessarily symmetry, but it's a way that the system finds its way to utilize more of itself in an efficient manner. And so we've just done a movement where we've primarily gone to one side. It's highly likely that you might feel differences from one side to the other. So let that be without trying to fix or correct or make even. So it is interesting. You could just put your hands, both hands, on your two collarbones, right? Like just put your right hand on your right collarbone and your left one on your left, wherever they are, right? So the collarbones are actually two of my favorite bones because they're super curvy and they're really pretty. They're graceful bones. Just feel like you could just slide along them from the sternum and out towards the shoulders, right? They're curvy. And just let the hands then rest somewhere in the center of the collarbones or wherever they rest. And just observe, your elbows are just resting probably on the floor or somewhere near there. And just feel as you just rest and you would just breathe naturally. Just notice, do the collarbones move? Like in any way, do they move? Even a tiny bit? Yeah, you notice what you notice. And if one moves somehow differently or more or less than the other. Okay, good. Now, bring your interlaced hands the same habitual way. Place them above your head in your hoop. Bend your knees, put your feet flat. And just feel, do you stand more clearly through your right leg or your left leg? Just press a little bit with your right foot into the floor. You just press a little bit, just directly. You're not trying to lift anything. And then unpress. And then press with your other foot. And just alternate. Press with one and press with the other. And just feel. Can you feel we talk about a skeletal connection. Can you feel the blank bone connected to the blank bone more clearly with less muscular effort on one side than the other? Okay, keep your knees bent, stop pressing. Slide your hoop and your head together over to the left. How do you do that? The plane of the face stays parallel to the ceiling. So be very, very mindful that you only go the distance that your head doesn't roll. Okay, you just laterally bend. It's not a huge, super huge movement. And you feel that one elbow and the other elbow somehow have to do something to coordinate. And they do have to coordinate somehow through that upper chest. And you slide to the right or to the left and then back to the center, your head and the hoop together. That's it. And more or less, can the elbows stay back? Like, it doesn't mean they have to stay exactly on the floor, but they're not coming a whole lot forwards. They're not coming towards the ceiling. And slide them to the left with your head. So you take the hoop of your arms and your head and you side bend. How can you reduce friction? And notice how when you go there, the right side of the trunk has to find some way to lengthen, and the left side of the trunk has to find some way to fold. I like to call it folding and unfolding, like an accordion. And just feel, do you go to the right side easier or do you go to the left side easier? Don't go back to the right side. You remember what you remember about it. So the next time you're to the left, stay there with the hoop and the head. And just a little bit while you're over there to the left, just change the angle of your interlaced hands. Like however they're turned, are they on the pinky side? Turn them towards the dorsum of the hand. If they're on the dorsum, turn them towards the palm. Just play with turning the palms a little bit while they're still interlaced. And feel that turning doesn't just occur with the palms, right? It occurs through the elbow and the shoulder and the clavicles. And you just let them rest in a slightly different place. And then a little bit, keeping the hoop of your arms to the left and your head to the left. So your head, the back of your head is to the left of center. And now keeping your head more or less to the left, can you begin to roll it from side to side? It's a crazy thing. So you roll it while you're off center. Yeah, and funny thing, that's nice, beautiful. As it rolls, what do you do with your legs? Can you reduce effort? These are funny configurations, right? They're novel, like we were saying in the beginning, they're novel in order to spark your ability to notice what you do. Can you reduce effort and coordinate somehow what you do with your pelvis and your legs as you do these funny things up here with your arms and your head? That's it. And then rest your head still to the left, but stop rolling it. And slide the hoop of your arms and your head further to the left. Can you? Without efforting. And now slide everything back to the center. And now very gently using your pelvis and your legs, however they can, to enable more efficiency and more smoothness, could you take the hoop and your head, sliding the back of your head to the right and to the left? So, and reducing effort. But it doesn't matter how far. Remember, it's not about the size of the movement. It's about the quality. That's it. See, when you slide everything to the right, do you tend to somehow stand more clearly through your left foot or your right foot? And when you go to the left, do you stand more clearly through your left foot or your right foot? How do you know? The elbows stay more or less back. Yeah, that's it. Now, bring everything back to the center. Keep your head in the center. Keep your knees standing or feet standing. Keep your head in the center. So now you're not going to slide your head. Don't slide your head. And slide your hoop from left to right. The hoop of your arms from left to right, but leave your head in the center. Yeah, funny thing. It's not so easy to do initially. So one elbow will come closer to the ear. The other elbow will go away from the ear, but the head stays in the middle. That's nice. The interlaced hands stay interlaced. You could play with where they rest. That's it. Okay, now bring the hands down, the legs down, and take a full rest. So in Feldenkrais speak, we say, these are all differentiations. These are differentiations between your head and your upper chest and your shoulders, where your head would move with your upper chest and shoulders, or your head would move somehow different in a different, slightly different plane. Because to be a human, you differentiate movement between your head, neck, and shoulders and upper chest constantly. You do it all the time. You're cooking and you look over here and your hand is here and your neck is there. You're driving, all these different things that we do as a human, or picking something up. And observe what these differentiations do to your whole system, not just your clavicles and your upper chest. But your contact in general and your breath in general. See, the reason we say that, whether it was Moshe or whoever it was that said this, that every lesson is a breathing lesson, the reason we say that is because when the system reduces its unbalanced tonicity, its resting tension, when it balances that more, it rests in a more counterbalanced way, then the general excessiveness and passiveness in the system balances. And your breath is the biggest marker of that. So if the general overall tonicity becomes more balanced, your breath will reflect that. Just like if you're scared or angry, Your breath is one of the first things that reflects that increased tonicity in the system. And so you just observe very gently while you're just lying there with your legs long, roll your head from side to side. And observe as you do that, how far through you do you sense the action? It's a funny thing because it's really just about going very slow, not to see how far you can roll your head. If you're really very honest and curious, as you roll the head, do you feel some sort of something turn in your clavicles? It's a funny thing because the clavicle lives between the sternum in the front and this little appendage thing on your shoulder blade that sticks forward. And the clavicle attaches to that appendage on the shoulder blade and the sternum. So when you turn your head, at some point that movement's going to impact your ribs. And your ribs impact your sternum. And so just observing how your clavicles turn and those first few ribs are impacted a lot by rotation of your head. And all of that would impact your breath, wouldn't it? Rest everything. Observing with the least amount of effort, can you find a way to really lazily slide your leg somehow by rolling it out to the side and sliding it up to stand? How would you do that? How would you let the leg somehow roll to slide up? Yeah, so some of you are rolling both over to one side. Some of you are rolling. Yeah, no, you don't stand up. No, you don't stand up. Just your legs come to standing. Yeah, you stay on your back. Yep, you stay on your back, your knees bent, and your feet go flat. That's it. Sorry, I'm speaking Feldenkrais speak, which is not fair. Feldenkrais speak says when your legs are standing, that means your feet are underneath your knees. So we can do that while we're lying, and we call it put the soles of your feet flat and bend your knees. But to your alligator brain, that's a function that it feels as if you're standing. Standing isn't a position, it's an action in the nervous system where what's above gets stacked over what's below, right? So your knees are bent, your feet are flat. You might hear me call that bring your legs to standing. And so interlace your fingers unhabitually. If you don't remember, feel which one feels more weird. And put a hoop above your head with your unhabitual interlaced hands. And just play with turning them again, right? Like turning the palms out or over or round, and just feel. You can turn them from the pinky side all the way to the thumb side, to the dorsum, and you can turn them towards the palm down and the palm up, right? And that doesn't just turn the palm. See if you can feel that turns through the humerus and into the clavicles. And then rest them in their most comfortable place, wherever that turning place is. And just feel if this feels more odd or somehow different than when you had them interlaced habitually. And just a little bit, press through your right foot into the ground. You just press through it as if you were standing more clearly through your right foot. And then unpress it, so you don't lift it. And then you press clearly through your left foot. So you just stand more fully on that foot. But you don't just stand on the foot, right? You stand through the side and just alternate. You stand more clearly through your right. And it might roll you, right? And you might feel your pelvis turn. And then you stand more clearly through the left. See, does that have an impact up through your spine? And can you feel that it impacts how your two elbows lie and your shoulders lie? Maybe it even invites your head to do something. Now, keep the knees bent, feet flat. Keep the hoop in place. And begin to explore with the unhabitual interlacing as smoothly as possible, sliding the back of the head and the hoop from side to side, slowly. And notice, can you initiate it with the least amount of what I call oomphin, right? Can it be really smooth, really in the transitions, right? Like you go across the middle and you go to one side, and then at some point you're going to change and go back towards the middle to the other side. At the moment of change, can you not effort? It's not so easy. It requires a coordination of folding and unfolding between the ribs to be occurring concurrently. And in order for one side of your rib cage to be opening as the other side is closing, something has to happen for stability there through your pelvis and your legs. And how do you reduce the friction from the back of your hands and your head? Yeah. Now, the knees remain more or less over the feet. So if their legs are going to remain more or less standing, your knees don't rotate a ton to the side, right? They might rotate a little bit. Yeah. Now, leave both your hoop and your head to the left. And now, with your head and your arms hooped over there, just begin to alternately press with one foot and then the other, keeping your head and your hoop to the left. So it's not straight. It feels weird. Yeah, so you're not trying to lift your pelvis or rotate anything, although you may feel that your pelvis deweights. And it feels odd because you're not straight and you just alternate like you were walking while you're lying. And feel as you press through the right and as you press through the left, what kind of an impact does it have up through your chest? Okay, now stop walking the feet and slide everything to the left a little bit further. Your head and your hoop. That's it. And roll your head a little bit while you're there. Notice as you're rolling your head, when you roll to the right, do you stand more clearly through your left foot or your right? When you roll to the left, do you stand more clearly through your left foot or your right? It's a funny thing. It's kind of pretzel-y, even though you're not super twisted. It feels like that. That's it. Beautiful. Bring your head back to rest. Keep your knees bent and slide everything to the right, or sorry, to the left a little bit further, to the left. Go further to the left. That's it. That's it. And now come back to the center and see if you can come just to the center accurately. How do you know? And slide the head and the hoop back directly to the center. Where is it? Now, keeping your head in your center, take just your hoop to the left and right. Just the hoop of the arms. The head stays in the center. The eyes stay relatively looking towards the ceiling, even if they're closed. You have to do something very different in your back when you move your arms without your head and when you move your head with your arms together, right? If you're not sure, take your head and your hoop together with your both directions. Take the head and the hoop of the arms to the right and left with the head, with the arms, and feel the difference. Granted, it's more mass, but feel how you have to organize your upper back differently. That's it. Okay, rest everything. Let your arms and legs down long. sense what's interesting, which in and of itself is an interesting question, right? Like, what does the nervous system become? Feldenkrais used to use the word compelled a lot. What does the nervous system feel compelled to attend to? And that's not your thinking mind. It's what I call your alligator brain. Your alligator brain is compelled to notice what feels different because it's designed after so many millions and billions of years of evolution to attend to something that's different, just in case it needs to respond to it in some way. So in the very beginning, in standing and in lying, I had you notice, like, how available is it to be able to move in the 6 directions, to initiate action to the right and left, up, that's over the top of the head or in the direction above the head, down below your feet, forward towards the ceiling, and backwards towards the floor. So it's not how far can you go in those directions. It's, does this nervous system have the capacity to initiate some action in all those directions? And it's sort of this idea that the mind thinks that we move in these linear directions, but we don't, because we don't just move to the side. There's all 3 dimensions in every action that we do. But we can begin to clarify that 3-dimensionality by becoming more clear about each of the 3 different dimensions. And this lesson is kind of about this sideways movement, right? But there's some rotation in it. Bend your knees, put your feet flat, or bring your legs to standing. That's it. Beautiful. And observe. Sense your breath. Interlace your fingers however you would prefer, habitual or unhabitual. Place them above your head. You bring your halo or your hoop up there. And now, very gently, begin to slide. Keep your head in the center. Begin to slide the hoop of your arms side to side. Leave the head in the center. Back of the head remains in contact with the ground, and you just slide the elbows, stay back, and you slide the hoop from side to side and feel the opening and closing concurrently. One side is opening as the other side is closing in your ribs. And can you imagine somehow there's some sort of a relationship, some sort of a, Gabi, the trainer that I trained with in Chicago, would always say, like a silky cord, a silky ribbon between one elbow to the other elbow, somehow through you. It doesn't have to be straight. It doesn't have to make sense. But somehow as you go from side to side, there's some relationship through the center of you as one elbow goes down and the other elbow comes up. Remember, down is towards your feet and up is towards your over your head, not up towards the ceiling. That's forwards. Can you coordinate that in a smoother way? Good. Now, the next time your hoop is over to the right, leave your hoop over there. Your head still stays in the center. Let the elbows rest. The hoop stays to the right, head stays in the center. What do you have to do? That's it. The elbows rest back towards the floor as much as possible. That's it. Now, keeping the hoop to the right, can you slide the head? Can you slide the back of the head towards the right to match the hoop? And then slide the back of the head to the center and towards the left. Won't go as far to the left probably. And keep the hoop to the right and slide the back of the head from right to left. That's it. The next time the head is to the right, leave it there, leave the hoop to the right, and slide everything back to the center. Keep the head in the center and slide the hoop to the left. That's it. That's it. And just notice, do you rest more easily to the left or did you to the right? Now, keep the hoop to the left and slide the head right and left, the head alone. Keeping the plane of the face, there you go, that's nice. Keeping the plane of the face towards the ceiling. Nice. And just notice, does the breath get interrupted more when you're to the left or was it to the right? Is it somehow easier to coordinate in one direction than the other? The next time the head is to the left, leave it there with the arms and slide everything right and left. Your head, your arms, the back of your head slides, and notice if it's getting any easier. To coordinate it, how do you use your legs and your pelvis? Bring everything back to the center. Bring your arms down, leave your knees bent. Head in the center. And press with one foot and then the other. And just feel, how does that come up through your chest now? Now, keep both knees bent, rest for a second. And think back to the clock. Use both legs and roll yourself from 12 to 6. Whatever you remember about that, just roll yourself so that the pelvis rocks, the low back flattens towards 12, and then the low back arches and the pubis goes down and under towards 6. That's it. And just feel how that gets reflected now up in the clavicles and the sternum and the head. Good. Now let everything down and take a full rest. Observe what you notice that feels interesting or curious when you lie on your back now. So your legs are long. Your arms are resting at your side, however they are. You notice the length of your legs and the distance of your arms from each side, right? One of those first things we noticed and attended to that gives you some information about how you rest your rib cage, right? Do you keep it a little bit more folded or unfolded on one side or the other? And maybe it doesn't have to make any logical sense. Maybe it feels like it's more open in one part of the rib cage and it's more closed in another part of the rib cage on the same side. See, perception and logic don't go together often. Gently roll your head from side to side. Ah, nice. And sense. Can you feel any kind of that action that comes further down through your trunk? Is there even an echo of that head rolling into your legs? Now, one last time, bend your knees, put your feet flat, leave your arms down at your side. And just come for a moment to part of the clock, the pelvic clock, and just keep your knees bent, your feet flat, and begin to roll from 12 to 6, but go very slow. And just notice when you go to 12, what do you do with your breath? And when you go to 6, what do you do with your breath? When do you have a tendency to inhale? When do you have a tendency to exhale? And just let your breath be natural, but just feel it and know. And just go from 12 to 6. And feel that there's an echo of 12 to 6 on the back of your head. And as your pubis goes down, your chin tucks down. And as your pubis lifts up and your low back flattens, your chin lifts a bit. And there's a contact shift along the back of your head, similar to the back of your pelvis. We alluded to it a little bit last week, but I'm drawing more explicit attention to it now. So you may already have known that. And now roll your pelvis from 3 to 9 or from 9 to 3. Your knees stay more or less standing. That's it. And notice what happens at the clavicles in the head. And then just wherever you would like to start, in whichever direction, just very gently roll around the clock for a second. Well, you're not trying to make it be big or perfect, but you're just feeling how round can it be? And can you sense what has to happen up there at the head and the upper chest? That it's actually helps to coordinate the pelvic clock, right? You could roll your pelvis in the other direction around the clock. And maybe where it's not so clear up in the upper chest and clavicles and neck is a corollary to where it's not so easy in the hips and pelvis, and vice versa. Good. Now take a rest. Yeah, you may as well rest with your legs long. Arms down. Notice how you allow yourself to be supported by Mother Earth now. If your legs are long, you can compare to what you felt in the beginning. Where is the spaces? Where's the contact? How might that be different from the beginning? See, often in a Feldenkrais lesson, as we allow ourselves to be supported more easily, we don't perch as much, what I call perching, where we kind of pull up against the ground. And we don't collapse as much, where we're like collapsed, right? Like smashed or pressed into the ground. Slowly, as you're ready, bend your knees, roll to your side, and come up to standing. And find a way to smoothly bring yourself up to standing. Come off of your mat so you're in the same configuration to the floor. That's nice that you were in the beginning. And sense how you stand. How do your arms hang? Where's there a sense of heaviness and lightness? And the truth is efficiency will have us feel grounded and buoyant. I call it grounded buoyancy, right? Where you're not like compressed or flattened into the ground. You're not pushing yourself down, nor are you pulling up away. But yet you're being pushed or lightened up from the center of the earth at the same time that you're solidly connected down. Notice the shape of the ribs and how the arms hang. And very gently shift your weight towards one side. Yeah, you just sense like, how do you do that? And come back and shift your weight to the other side. And sense as you shift your weight and you stand more clearly through one side, can you have a sense of remaining, that you're still being what I call talling, right? Where you're in a verb and you're going in the direction towards the sky as you go in the direction down towards the earth. Like, how does that happen? And how does that happen when you go to the other side? See, where do you feel that you compress or collapse or give too much, and where do you perch or pull or resist too much? Because if you collapse in one area, you do too much in another area. They go together. And then gently take a walk. Sense your arm swing. Sense the quality of your breath in general, and just the overall tonicity of the system. Does it feel quieter? Okay. So we tied this in a little bit to the lesson we did last week. So whether you did last week's lesson or not, it doesn't really matter. But for those of you that have, you can begin to see some relationship here. So this week, you can play with this idea of beginning to sense what goes on at the upper part of your chest and your trunk in general and through your breath. And if you wanted to come back and explore some with the halo, you could do that. There's going to be probably some other version of this lesson we'll do at some point in this series. Okay, thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next week.